when we are walking around in our weakness, it's a false narrative that you have to work on that weakness and just fix it and become strong and be good at everything. Sometimes your weakness exists so that somebody else's strength can shine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Agents Who Crush It in Real Estate. I'm your host, Lindsay Favazza, and today we have an incredibly inspiring guest with us. Known as the Queen of Relational Real Estate, Jacki Semerau Tait is a top producing realtor and acclaimed real estate coach. Her journey from having just $4 to her name to empowering thousands of agents to achieve consistent six-figure incomes is nothing short of remarkable. Beyond her success in real estate, Jacki is also an international best-selling author and a professional motivational speaker who has shared platforms with legends like Les Brown and Magic Johnson. Her $4 story has transformed lives around the world, and we're thrilled to have her share her wisdom and insights with all of us today. So, welcome to the show, Jacki.
Thanks so much for having me, Lindsay. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Yes, it's going to be so much fun. So take us back to the very beginning. How did you get into real estate and what was your motivation to do that? What were you doing before? Take us in the time capsule.
Gotcha. Well, my background was in marketing and advertising. But when I decided to get into real estate, I was a stay-at-home mom at the time. And my then husband and I decided we wanted to get started buying investment properties. And I started working with a real estate agent who really didn't understand what our goals were. And I don't think looking back and knowing what I know now, I don't think she really worked with investors. I think she was more like the, motherly, I'll hold your hand, first time buyer agent. Yep. And so for us, we didn't really, we were just starting. And this was before you could learn, this is before you could open up YouTube and basically learn all sorts of tips and tricks, all that kind of thing. And so I said, you know what? Instead of trying to find an agent who understands what we're looking for, I am just going to go to real estate school and figure it out for myself. Yep. So that was what inspired me to go to school. But while I was in school, the oddest thing happened. I completely fell in love with it. And I say that it's odd because if any of you listening ever went to real estate school, it's not much to fall in love with. not a lot of
it's not like the college campus vibe or, no keg parties.
Not at all. But I think what really appealed to me, so I am a creative through and through, and I'm all about that 30,000 foot view. But I think what really got me with real estate is all the intricacies. To build a deal, you have to put it together like a puzzle, and every deal is different. And so to me, I found that challenge really appealing. And so I was basically, kind of taking my school test going, I think I want to do this for real. And so that's what I did. I got my license and I went to work. I started working with a small company. It was a Prudential franchise branch in Cave Creek, Arizona. And I had my first deal in escrow within 6 days of hanging my license. And so I was like, oh, this really, what's that?
Was it beginner's luck looking back, or did you was that like the start of it?
Well, yes and no. So basically what happened is back then, again, I'm talking 2002. So like everybody having an email was a new thing. And we were still faxing deals. Okay. This was, so just to set the stage as to what you had to do. And again, my background is in advertising and marketing. But when I started, they offered floor time. And so that was the first thing I did is I signed up for floor time. And a kind of funny little side story is I'm sitting there. It's my third day. So I did Monday, I did Wednesday, and I did Friday. So it's Friday. I just got there and the receptionist is like, hey, I'm going to go to lunch. Will you grab the phones? And so right after she leaves, I'm the only person in the office. The phone rings and I'm like, whatever the company name was. And they're like, yes, we're looking to talk to an agent. I kid you not. I was like, oh, who do I give this to? And then I'm like,
wait a minute.
I'm an agent. I can help you.
That's so cute.
And so those were the people. They were coming into town. It was Labor Day weekend. I spent the weekend with them and opened escrow for them on Tuesday morning.
Can you
So
imagine if there was another agent in the office and you're like, hey, I have a lead, and they're like looking at you going, what are you doing? That's adorable. So tell me about those early years of getting started. It must have been a challenge, and then you had to go through 2008 and all of that was challenging. So tell me how like your career and your journey kind of progressed.
Great question. So interestingly enough, that first deal that I got was the worst thing that could have happened to me, because I truly thought this real estate thing is easy. You just I don't know what everybody's talking about. You just show up, the phone rings, you get clients. Hey. So it really put me honestly behind the 8 ball. And I abandoned everything I knew about marketing and advertising. I mean, I came in thinking, okay, I've got this plan, I've got that plan. Yep. The reason I picked the brokerage I did is because they had, again, time era, they had postcards and flyers that I could use and have them print my name on them, and then I could deliver those and all this. I mean, I had the whole thing. Websites were brand new thing, and I was on it. I'm like, oh, I'm going to get an individual website. And I would call people and tell them, hey, if you want to search for properties, you can go to my website. And they did. It wasn't like today where you're like, why would I go to your website? I got Zillow, I got Realtor.com. I can just go to Google. It doesn't matter. But truly that put me behind the 8 ball. And so I struggled a little bit. In my first couple of years, I did sell some homes, some of them by blind luck and some of them intentionally. Hey, but I actually went through divorce. So that, interestingly, that husband that I had at the time, he and I never did buy an investment property. Yeah. We actually ended up getting a divorce. And so to provide some stability, I had a 3 and a 5-year-old. And so to provide some stability, instead of staying in the agent game, I started to work in the corporate marketing office for a Fortune 150 title company. And I think that I can credit that so much for, me being able to do well as an agent later on. But basically I did that. I worked for the title company for 3 years, and I actually left the title company to go back to the agent side in the fall of 2007. So the market had already started to shift. We were already on a downward trajectory. So I knew what I was getting into. Yep. But I think at the time, I had spent 3 years putting together programs for real estate agents to help real estate agents become more successful. I did trainings. I did all sorts of things. And so I was like, listen, I'm going to go do this. Yeah. Because I saw so many people struggling, and I thought, okay, I know what to do. I'm going to hit it. I'm going to go for it. And I did. And I actually did well. However, I had 2 deals in escrow when I don't know if how many of you were around, remember, but in 2008, we had that stock market crash in June of 2008. Yep. And both of those deals, and I mean, I had 2 deals and for a total of about 2 million in sales, which 2008, great numbers. And both of them fell out because of the crash. And I was really counting on those deals going through. And then my own personal downfall ensued after that. So yeah, that kind of takes us to 208.
So now, are we now at the $4? Are we now?
Oh, no.
$4? Oh, no. Okay.
Worse. Oh, yeah.
Oh, no. Tell us how it got worse before it gets better.
So at that time, I owned my own home. I had 2 girls going to private school. I had done a great, I had success financially, and things were kicking. And here we go. So I still can remember a few months later having to make the difficult decision to not be able to pay my mortgage. It was, okay, you either pay the mortgage or you keep the lights on and food on the table. Yep. And I remember in those times, like, it never hit me that this could be long term. I just kept saying, no, I'm going to, I know what to do. I'm fighting for it. I'm showing up every day. So I'm like, I just won't pay my mortgage this month. I'll get caught up next month. Next month came and I couldn't get caught up, and so on and so forth. So eventually I did. I short sold. My house went into foreclosure. So instead of letting it foreclose, I did a short sale on the house, and I moved back in with my parents. So here I come. I've got my, my kids, I've got my stuff, and quite frankly, my pride and all in tow. And I had to move in with my parents again, thinking few short months. I'm going to get back up on my feet. This is going to be no time flat. We'll be fine.
Thank goodness you had that too. Thank goodness you had that to fall back on, and their support. I'm sure they were happy to take you in and try to help,
my parents are truly great. And I was raised by parents that family is everything.
Yes.
So in our world, it wasn't even anything that my parents necessarily, I don't come from money. My dad was blue collar, hardworking, middle class. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. But I was very blessed to have that situation. And so we could move in with them.
Yeah.
And it honestly ended up being 2.5 years before I was able to move out. And it was during that 2.5 years that I kind of took a little bit of a step back from real estate, and I was doing marketing. I was doing marketing consulting for small businesses and for some other realtors and some brokerages. So all of that happening, and basically, it wasn't just me. I mean, this was a global thing.
Yep.
Great Recession of 2008, it started in 2008. Now we're in 2009. And I am doing marketing while other people are making those difficult decisions of, do I make payroll or do I pay this independent contractor?
Yeah.
And so I had a lot of outstanding items. I had accounts billable out there, but nothing was being received. And so I woke up one morning and I would constantly check my bank account. And I just remember waking up, checking my bank account, and I was overdrawn on one account. I was at a flat zero on another. And I look in my purse and I had 4 single dollar bills to my name. And I remember in that moment just going, this is the sum of your net worth. Although, truth be told, I was in so much debt that that's not even true. It was like, no, this is the sum of your available funds.
Yes, this is the available funds that you have at the moment.
Exactly.
So scary. So scary.
It was terrifying. And I had, at that time too, it was right before my kids were going to start school. I had to take them out of the, private school that they were in, and they were going to start going to public school. And so, of course, we had to get school supplies, and we had to get school clothes for them. Well, my parents were gracious enough to get the school supplies for them, but I needed to provide school clothes, and I truly had no idea how I was going to do that. And so, excuse me, that day I had a business meeting at Starbucks, and I still remember walking into this particular Starbucks, ordering a venti water, because there was no way I'm spending my last $4.
$9 on a coffee.
I ain't spending $4 on an expensive cup of coffee, and now I have nothing to show for it but a caffeine buzz. And so I did. I sat down with this person who was a business associate, but also a friend. And so he kind of looked at me about halfway through, and he's like, okay, what's going on? He's like, you are not yourself. Yeah. And I tend to hold my cards close to my chest. I don't like to open up about that kind of stuff. And for some reason I did. And I kind of told him about how I couldn't afford school clothes, and I've got all these outstanding bills and they're not coming in. I don't even think I told him about the $4. I just was like, I can't afford to get the girls school clothes. Yeah. And he actually gave me some money and said, go buy your kids some school clothes. And so, yeah. And so part of this whole story, in coming out of it, one of the lessons right here, I like to stop the story and say, listen, look for the helpers. Yes. They're out there. And sometimes it's not about money. Sometimes it's about other things, but people will come alongside you and help you out. I think in our in our Western culture society, we are raised to believe we can do it all, have it all, know it all, be it all. We don't need anybody's help. We're strong. We're powerful. Bah, bah, bah. You know what?
Until we break.
Yes.
Yep.
And I truly believe that we as human beings have lost the nuance of that we're meant to come alongside each other and be, each other's yin to the yang from time to time. And so when we are walking around in our weakness, it's a false narrative that you have to work on that weakness and just fix it and become strong and be good at everything. Sometimes your weakness exists so that somebody else's strength can shine.
I love that.
And I just, in that moment, that was a lesson that I learned. And moving on down the road, I was able to buy my kids school clothes. I had enough left over to buy them dollar cones at Baskin Robbins.
Nice.
So, yeah. And I tried to pay him back later when the money kind of came in, and he goes, "Oh, don't want your money." He said, "Pay it forward." And so I've had the opportunity to do that over and over again financially, but that is also part of why I come and I tell this story.
Yep.
So, because we don't end there. The trajectory goes up and not to give a spoiler, but life is good today.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's get into the spoils. Let's get into how did things change from there? Like what were the next steps? Now that someone, handed you that olive tree, really, that olive branch, how did you get it to be a tree? How did you take that and make sure to, grow it and get back on your feet?
I love that. So I did. I continued to work hard, look for opportunities, and eventually was able to get back up on my feet. I moved out of, my parents' house, got a 3-bedroom apartment, and I remember it felt like a palace. After everything, like being in this little 3-bedroom apartment was like, whoa! I can't even believe this.
So much space.
And and so it was an upward trajectory. I still had bumps in the road, so I don't want to give the impression that like, oh, and then life was rosy and we fixed it and we're good and high five. Like, no. I mean, there got to a point where I was almost evicted from that apartment because the opportunities that I had followed. I was working with a tech startup, and we lost our funding. And so we lose our funding, which means I lose my stipend, and out, here I am yet again.
Yeah.
So now I take my real estate and my marketing experience, and I start to work with a mortgage lender, representing a few of their top loan officers by helping their real estate agents with their marketing. Yep. So I got to kind of marry all of that together, which was really great. And that was a fun gig, to be honest. And then we had an opportunity to move out of the Scottsdale area in Arizona and move to Flagstaff. So by this time, I'm remarried. My kids are teenagers. And so my now husband and I packed everything up. We moved to Flagstaff, where he had a second home in Flagstaff for years. Yep. So we spent time here and whatnot. And so we moved to Flagstaff. And so here's the great thing. I had been coaching agents. I had been training agents. I had been working with them on their marketing. And I said, okay, listen, I'm going into a brand new market where I know 3 people, 2 of whom are already realtors. So I need to prove that the things I coach work.
Yep.
Or I am going to prove that I don't know what I'm talking about, and I need to zip it with this whole coaching business. Either way, it's great.
Either way, sink or swim.
Sink or swim. So I created my own, I truly became my own case study. And I did. I came up here. I put the systems to work. I put the relationship building tactics to work. And my first year up here, I sold $7 million in real estate.
Wow.
Which, we're talking 10 years ago. And that was a pretty significant chunk for just hitting the ground running.
Yep.
So fast forward to today, 10 years later, I've been top 1% of Realty One Group nationwide for the last 5 years and counting. And I lead a team of agents now. So I got too busy to just be me. I started by bringing on 1 agent, et cetera, et cetera. So now we're at 6 agents and a transaction coordinator. And I also am coaching agents. I still coach. Now I'm doing it thanks to Zoom. I get to do nationwide coaching, but I also train our newbies in our brokerage. I train all the newbies that come in. We've got about 700 agents in our brokerage, 11 different offices. And so when we get newbies, I coach those newbies through. I pair them with a local mentor, and then I work with them there. So there's the full circle
spectrum.
story.
I love it. So you mentioned being a top 1% realtor.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to hone in on that a little bit, because I think a lot of people, that's what they're striving to do. That's what they're trying to be, number one in their market. They're trying to be number one in their company, in their office, whatever that is. So what are some of the habits? What are some of the things that a top 1% realtor should have in your perspective? Because it's funny, we've seen agents come into our company and they're brand new to the business. And I say to myself, that person's going to kill it. And then they don't. Or the opposite happens. I'm like, you get that impression. You're like, yeah, this isn't going to be for them. And then all of a sudden they're a top producing realtor in their market. Right. So there doesn't seem to be any real rhyme or reason to a personality type, to anything like that. So what is it? What is the habits? What are the things that make someone successful that they do? Not who they are, because we clearly can see that it could be anyone that can do it, but what are the habits they have to have in order to become successful?
Well, first and foremost, Lindsay, you keyed in on the fact that it is the habits. 100%. It's your habits. And whether you're in real estate or any other gig out there, it's the tiny daily habits that create the large successes. Yep. You hear people talk about, quote unquote, overnight successes. There's no such thing. You hear people talk about, like you just said, where an agent comes in and we can't really tell by their personality, but all of a sudden they're a top producer. And all of a sudden people from outside the brokerage who weren't there for their journey are like, where did this wonderful person come from? And it's not about that. It truly is the habit. So first and foremost, and I should say, let me back up. It's not just the habits, it's the habits and the systems. So first and foremost, when you're brand spanking new in real estate, or let's say you're listening to this right now and you're like, my business is a hot mess. There's no consistency. I don't know what to do. If there's one thing I can say, is just, okay, stop and fix your systems. That is going to be the number one thing you can do. You've got to have a CRM, a database of some sort. And I highly recommend having a real estate specific database, if at all possible. I have worked with agents in coaching before where I literally will ask them, well, where are your people? Where is your database? And they hold up their iPhone and say, well, they're in my contact list. I'm like, no.
I know. It kills me too. We have agents that join the business who have been selling for years, have tons and tons of clients, top in their market. And I'll say to them, okay, so we're going to get your list so that we can send out a mailer to them. And they're like, I don't have that. What? It's incredible to me how they do so well without it, but you gotta have it. Get that all in a place.
Honestly, and I've worked with those agents as well. In fact, I remember when I was doing the coaching, working with the lender, I met with a top producing agent in Paradise Valley, Arizona, which Paradise Valley, Arizona is kind of like the Beverly Hills of Arizona. Okay. It's the rich people place. It's the high dollar real estate. It's, it's all of that. And when I met with him and we looked at his systems, they were a mess. And he actually brought me in to set up an email newsletter. And it was a lot of work just getting all of his people together in an Excel spreadsheet, making sure we had proper email addresses. And when I looked at him, I look at he is just go, 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 go. So he, kind of throws some stuff into systems here and there. He hired somebody who, he just kind of throws some stuff at, and then she would get some things organized. But really, we had to go way back and go, okay, but before you brought this person on, let's look at all of that. And so we were able to get that up and running, and so, and here's the thing. We all have our gifts and we all have our talents, right? So let me just back up for a second and just say, okay, so first and foremost, get your system set up. Have your CRM I literally run my business by every morning I wake up, I use Follow Up Boss, and Follow Up Boss sends me an email of what I need to do that day.
Yep.
It'll say, and it's all built by the things I put in there. So every time I talk to a contact, I have them in my Follow Up Boss, I make a note, and then I put a follow-up task for later. Whether that's, maybe we just had a conversation. Maybe we didn't even talk about real estate. Maybe it was somebody I was just calling to touch base. Hey, how you doing? How's life? How's the kids? Did you just have a graduate? How's your dog doing? Or geez, I saw on Facebook you had to put your dog down. I'm so sorry. Whatever that conversation is, we have that conversation and it's like, hey, great catching up with you. And even if it ends there, I still put a follow-up to, touch base with them in 3 to 6 months, whatever the case may be. So there's always somebody to follow up with. So if you get into that system, now I don't have to think about it. I don't have to wake up and pull up my CRM and say, oh, well, who do I call? I know I got to make calls today, but who do I call? Like, no, Follow Up Boss is telling me who to call. So this is the first step that I can tell you, is to get that system set up. Now the habits become making the calls.
Yeah.
But when you are doing these habits, I do like to tell people about this particular study that a group called Curator did. Curator, I'm sure maybe you've heard of them, big in marketing for real estate professionals. They did a study, and what the study boiled down to is that for every 100 phone calls you make, 29 people are going to have a conversation with you. And they judged a conversation, 29 people are going to answer. Of the people who answer your call, half of those are going to have a conversation with you. And they judged conversation by how many people stayed on the phone with you for 30 seconds or more. Okay. So now you've got about 14, 15 people who are having an actual conversation with you. From there, they found that of those 14, 15 people, 2 will book an appointment with you.
Yep.
So now I'm looking at this going, okay, let's take those numbers and say, now, if I want to set 1 appointment a week, according to that data, I have to make 50 calls.
Yep.
50 calls gets me to 1 appointment a week. If I can make 1 appointment a week, we've made 52 appointments for the year. Now, let's just say I'm awful at closing. Okay. And then this is, to me, I'm like, okay, let's take this down to the ridiculous. Let's say of those 52 appointments, you literally only get half of those people to work with you. And I think you could do more. But let's just say you're like, I'm awful in front of people. I just, it's not my talent, whatever. But you get half of those people to book with you, whether it's a buyer, a signed buyer agreement or a signed listing agreement. One of those 2 things, that's how we're going to judge success in this situation. So if I get a signed buyer agreement or a signed listing agreement, and half of those 52 appointments, I have 26 real clients for the year. Now, I know most realtors are not closing 26 deals a year. National Association of Realtors says the average realtor closes 6 transactions a year. Yep. So I promise you, if you're doing 26 transactions per year, you are going to crush it. There's your 6 figures. And in the beginning, when you start this process, you're going to have to build upon it. You're not going to come out of the gates and it's not a perfect scenario. It's not like you're like, Jackie, I made my 50 calls. I got no appointments.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're talking about. I'm moving on to the next.
Yeah.
Be consistent, because maybe this week you make your 50 calls and you don't get any appointments, but next week you make your 50 calls and you get 2. Yep. Or maybe it takes you a month. Yeah, maybe it takes you a month worth of making 50 calls. And here's the other thing. Guess what? If you don't get the results and you're like, okay, so the 50 calls a week, I'm not getting anything. Bump it up. Do 100 calls, whatever the case needs to be for you to meet your goals. But that's where I want people to at least start. So do that habit. 50 calls a week. You will. And you won't be able to help yourself but to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. This is great advice. I want to, we're already at 30 minutes, which is shocking. Shocking to me. I just looked up and went, what? How did that happen? So my last question to you is really to help us to figure out how we can work with you, because there's probably a lot of agents that are listening that are thinking to themselves, I need her to coach me. So give us your elevator pitch. Give us how we can find you, what we can do to, if it's an agent that's listening that wants to take their business to the next level, how do they get in contact with you?
Thank you for asking. So first and foremost, I have a gift for your audience. So if you go to
awesome.
Buy Referral, which is byreferral.com, you can put in your information. I have a free download, and it's a 4-step mastery guide to working with your sphere of influence. So these are truly the 4 things that I do on a consistent basis to build my relationships in real estate that has led me to a business where my personal book of business is 92% referral based. So, yep, that's it.
Perfect.
So if you go to buyreferral.com, you can download that. That's also going to put, here's who I'm not. I don't email you like all the time. So it really just puts you in the loop to be notified when I'm going to launch my next group coaching session. And so you may hear from me right away. You may not hear from me for 6 weeks, but I will contact you when I am going to do my next group coaching. So from there, though, if you're like, that I'm not really that interested, but you want to see some of the other things that I have to offer, you can just go to steps2strength.com. And that's my link tree that's got literally like everything. You can find my YouTube channel. I do a YouTube channel with my husband called The Empty Nester Life. Like you can link to my books that I've written. I mean, whatever. So you find everything there.
Well, and we also have all your links down here. So they can find you that way. And we're going to put all the links that you just mentioned and everything into the show notes, including your book. So we'll make sure to link that in the show notes as well. So if you learned a lot today from Jacki, I do recommend reaching out to her. She's a wealth of knowledge, so much information today. I think we could have done 3 full episodes on everything that you have to offer. So maybe we'll have you back. We'll do a little extra.
I would love that. I would love to come back.
Well, thank you so much, Jacki. And thank you so much to our listeners for listening to this episode of the Agents Who Crush It in Real Estate. We'll see you guys on the next one. Have a great one. Thanks, Jacki.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Agents Who Crush It in Real Estate podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with your friends and colleagues, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. If you're interested in being a guest, email us at info@crushitnre.com. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to crush it in real estate.